Hello, my name is Emmy, and I'm the lead therapist at SCL, now with Intermountain, and today we're going to talk about implementing sgrt for pelvis treatments, common pitfalls, and how to overcome them. Okay, so Align RT has slowly become our main tool for our day-to-day treatments. We started out with chests and non-breath hold breaths, and then once we started with extremities, it was the point of no return because everything was getting so much quicker. And then we added in our DIBHs. And at this point, we realized how quickly things could be that we had been resistant to adding pelvises in for a multitude of reasons that we'll cover today. But when we finally... I'm not meant to run this. Can you have it show my notes on the bottom? And is it the green button? There we go. Okay, so this is kind of where we started with pelvises. We've evolved to what you're seeing on the screen as far as like where our ROIs are. Not every patient is the same shape, so that has really been like a learning curve for us because our ROIs, we're always editing them. So you can kind of see as that turns that that's what we're doing now, but we came a long ways. So the common pitfalls that we're going to cover today are, first of all, our setup style, and that was our main resistance in doing pelvis patients with sgrt. Being too covered up, ROIs being too big or too small, skin folds, belly breathing, and the motion that causes, false pitch, and then really just the therapist standing in the way. It's more of a learning curve than anything. So our setup style was what led us to really put this at the bottom of the list. We had to treat on a mobile halcyon unit for a couple months while we were tearing out an Electa machine and putting in our TrueBeam. And if you've ever treated on the halcyon, when they go in, they're like in the bore. So we had to bring them back out to adjust their shoulders. So we just got rid of vac locks. So you can see on that first picture, that's how we set up our pelvis patients, the 4-inch pillow and the knee roll. So to get over that first pitfall of them not being indexed and resisting going back to vac locks, we make sure that the 4-inch pillow is at the top of the table. So at least then after your first day of having the table parameters auto load, you're close on your long if you're flush with the top of the table. This is an example of how our patients are set up. Lucky for me, my husband volunteered, I drug him there, to be my patient. As you can see, he's very covered up. Like, we do the loincloth, which leads us to our next pitfall of patients being too covered up. This was a hard transition for us because we would put the warm blanket back over them for treatment, and we really had to alter how we were in sim straightforward with the patient. We're not going to cover you up. We will be monitoring your whole pelvis. I think it starts with a good base of education with them on day one, so they know what they're getting into. We do the loincloth, so their sides are exposed and most of their front. You can see the picture, there's lots of shades of green. I had a pillowcase over my ROIs for this picture. You can guarantee that 90% of the time when our deltas are jumpy, the loincloth is too far up on their pelvis. So your deltas are jumpy. Step one, I tell the therapist, pull that loincloth down and make sure that the sides are folded up. Next, we have the ROI being too big or too small. It's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Has to be just right. Too big, you're probably going to have skin folds in there and a lot of adipose tissue, and it's just not reproducible. This ROI specifically, we coned down and got off that belly fold. She was a pretty deep breather, so there was lots of motion, and our deltas were going back and forth. That's just not reproducible, and you're probably going to have some shifts off of your cone beam. So every pelvis patient for probably the first 4 months, we were editing that ROI on the fly, trying to get what we liked each and every time we had them in there. If the ROI is too small, your Vision RT doesn't have enough information to tell you where to go. So the red and green bars would be jumpy with this one because there's nothing on the laterals. When you have a slow frame rate on the bottom right of your screen, the larger ROIs, this means that you have to adjust that ROI. If the frame rate is less than 1 frame per second, you need to edit it. The frame rate is located in the bottom right, under the surface. This one specifically we struggled with because she was supposed to be frog leg but couldn't get there, so each time she would frog leg differently. So we were continuously trying to figure out how low to go on the sides of her, getting enough on the front of her, which kind of leads to skin folds and belly breathing. This is probably the hardest because each patient is shaped so differently, and if our doctors want them frog-legged, then that just adds in an extra layer of complications. So we're kind of learning with this every day. Each therapist that draws the ROIs kind of has a different vision of what to avoid and what to contour. Like all sites with the pelvis patients, we avoid the skin folds. The camera can't see in them. You don't want to contour the belly motion, and you can tell that if you do, it's really the deltas move lots. We've kind of touched on this already, but adipose tissue is not stable for setup. I like to think of it as if I wouldn't have put a tattoo there, I wouldn't put an ROI there. False pitch. This is one that we really struggled with until Mary Elizabeth came to train us. She came, I think it was for our 1-year training, and we had geared up for her coming and started the pelvis process. We wanted to get enough under our belt so when she was there, she could be like, you guys are a wreck. So we were telling her about the false pitch, how nearly every patient we had pitch. So she worked with us that day about where we're putting our knee roll, if it's too far up or too far down, if it's real pitch, or if it's just false pitch. So we've really worked through where we're putting our ROIs there. If they're too far down on the leg, you're going to have lots of false pitch because of where we put the knee roll. So we're trying to avoid long ROIs on the leg. But seriously, though, she's amazing, and we're going to miss her coming. The last pitfall was really just breaking the therapists of where they stood. I think all of us, where I am, stood right in the camera. Like, side cameras couldn't see anything, and then we'd move and it would look totally different than when we were standing there. So we've all just had to move 1 step towards the foot of the table, and that's really hard to do for 5 of us. But here are some examples that we've worked through. This was just at the beginning, we thought we could just do a front one, and that was very naive of us because that didn't work at all. Too small without the sides. It was very jumpy. Had to edit that on the fly there. As you can see, kind of small sides. She was tricky because there was folds and belly breathing, and then you'd get too far down the leg. So we were just really glad when those 30 fractions were over. This one will move also. Kind of working on different side things there. This is what we're currently using. We like a big square on each of the side hips, and then as much as we can get on the front without getting up onto the belly or covering it with our loincloth. It's been a work in progress, but it has definitely quickened up all of our setups. We couldn't have done this without Mary Elizabeth urging us along and helping us every step of the way. So we are now all Vision RT on everything, so we'll never go back.